Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take your source material, your dense guides, your technical papers, and turn them into knowledge you can actually apply.
And today, we're jumping into a guide called Mastering Ingredient Aging.
Our mission here is to sort of reframe how we all think about time in product creation.
Exactly. We want to move aging way beyond just, simple preservation. This is about seeing aging not as passive waiting, but as a precise form of product orchestration.
I love that word orchestration because we're not just talking about, old cheese or some dry aged beef. We're talking about these highly controlled, measured processes. They influence everything from, say, the stability of a cosmetic pigment all the way to the flavor in a plant-based burger.
It's everywhere. It really is the ultimate toolkit for getting that clean label appeal and creating these really authentic, complex flavors without a ton of artificial additives.
Okay, so let's unpack this with the science first because that's the foundation. Your sources break aging down into three fundamental mechanisms: enzymatic, microbial, and chemical. Right.
What's the core difference between them? And, what's the key control point for each one?
Well, you can think of them as three different engines, all driving some kind of transformation. So first up is enzymatic aging.
Go.
This is all about tailoring enzyme-influenced pathways. These are like biological accelerators that are already in the raw material itself. Things like proteases that break down proteins.
So you're basically guiding a natural breakdown process, but with some pretty serious guardrails in place.
Precisely. The goal is to get a target outcome. Say, more tenderness in a protein, but you have to preserve the nutritional integrity and, of course, the safety.
And the control.
It's all about manipulating external factors. So you're optimizing temperature, pH, specific time windows. The most critical part, operationally, is having clear stopping points. You have to monitor those enzyme levels because if you let it run just a bit too long,
it all falls apart.
You don't get tender, you get texture collapse, it turns to mush. That window is narrow. Right. That makes total sense. And that focus on stopping points, it kind of leads us to the second, and I'd argue maybe the most popular, mechanism, microbial activity.
Microbial aging, yeah. Or fermentation. This is the complexity builder.
Right.
It uses fermentation, specific cultures. We're talking lactic acid bacteria, yeasts, molds, and these managed ecosystems to just radically transform flavor, aroma, and texture.
So the microbes are basically eating substrates and then producing what?
Organic acids and volatile compounds.
Volatile compounds. What does that actually mean for the finished product?
That's where the magic is. It's the tanginess, that deep creaminess, or those sharp, savory, almost cheese-like notes consumers just love. And it's not just food. In cosmetics or supplements, this process creates functional extracts with better stability, making ingredients more robust.
The source material quotes a fermentation scientist, Dr. Aisha Rao. She says microbe-driven aging unlocks sensory layers tied to authenticity and craft.
She's absolutely right.
So what's the biggest risk to maintaining that authenticity?
Reliability. It all comes down to reliability. What Dr. Rao stresses is that if you want that authenticity, and you want it to be consistent batch after batch, it all hinges on super tight environmental control and rigorous surveillance.
You can't just wing it.
No. You need a validated culture plan, continuous testing. You're not just measuring temperature, you're measuring the metabolites, the actual flavor compounds, in real time to make sure you're on target.
Okay, that brings us to number 3, chemical aging. This one sounds, I don't know, less biological, maybe faster.
It often is. Chemical aging is all about non-biological reactions. The two big ones are the Maillard reactions, that's the desirable browning that gives you roasted notes, and lipid oxidation.
Which is basically fat going rancid.
Exactly. And then you also have things like polymerization, which can alter texture.
So on one hand, you get that beautiful crust on bread, but on the other, the risk of it going wrong must be astronomical.
It is. It's high stakes. Too much Maillard browning, you get bitterness. And with oils or fats, any uncontrolled oxidation, and you get off flavors, rancidity, and the nutritional quality just plummets.
Yeah, so how do you control something that isn't alive and happens so fast?
The control strategy is intensely technical. You're using antioxidant strategies, managing controlled atmospheres with inert gases, and setting up these very precise time-based checkpoints. For any developer, the absolute non-negotiable is what the guide calls a clear chemistry map.
A chemistry map?
Yeah. It's a map linking specific reactions to specific sensory endpoints. If you don't have that map, you're not orchestrating anything. You're just, heating things up and hoping for the best.
That's a great way to put it. So if we connect this all to the bigger picture, These three mechanisms are put into practice using specific methods. Let's start with fermentation in an industrial setting.
It's just a beautifully efficient process. I mean, the microbial activity, it doesn't just develop flavor, it actually preserves the ingredients by reducing water activity.
So it's a flavor generator and a preservative at the same time.
Exactly. And that dual function is, a primary route to that huge consumer trend, clean label.
Because you don't need to add as many synthetic things.
Right. Fermentation minimizes the need for synthetic stabilizers or preservatives. But to be clear, this requires serious industrial rigor. You have to pair it with real-time monitoring of pH, temperature, and those metabolites we talked about to steer the outcome safely.
Okay, beyond fermentation, let's talk about curing. We all think of meat, salt, nitrates.
And that core function-extending shelf life by pulling out moisture, it translates into some really surprising modern applications. Curing concepts are now being used for cosmetic grade and dietary ingredients.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, think about using mineral-rich systems to stabilize texture and integrity in, say, a pigment. The core principle is the same.
That's fascinating. I never would have thought of that.
It just shows how cross-functional these concepts are. But whether it's a protein or a pigment, quality control is demanding. You have to monitor residual salt, moisture activity, color stability. If you lose control of moisture, you lose control of safety. Period.
And tying all of this together are the controlled aging environments. This is where the tech really comes in.
Absolutely. Modern facilities use hyper-precise climate control. That means managing gas composition, the balance of CO2 and nitrogen, and humidity to optimize everything and minimize spoilage.
So for anyone managing this on a global scale, what's the one critical takeaway?
Continuous data logging. It's a non-negotiable. Temperature, humidity, microbial indicators. You have to log everything. That data is what allows for rapid root cause analysis if a batch goes wrong.
Right.
It dramatically reduces the risk of recalls. When you're orchestrating time, you need accountability.
Let's pivot to why all this work matters to the end user, the sensory experience. We know aging intensifies flavor, but how does that translate to the umami and savory notes people crave?
It's a chemical chain reaction, really. Enzymatic aging releases free amino acids, which boosts those savory umami notes. At the same time, microbial metabolism is generating esters and aldehydes.
Which add what kind of notes?
Complexity. They can be tangy, fruity, nutty. It results in this much more layered flavor profile that really makes a product stand out.
And the sources say this isn't just about taste, it's psychology. Consumers connect those aged flavors with craftsmanship.
That's the key market insight, yeah. That association drives a willingness to pay more. But that value proposition, it completely hinges on consistency. If you pay a premium for an aged product, you expect that same experience every single time.
And texture is just as critical, the mouthfeel, the structure.
Oh, absolutely. The changes can be anything from improved tenderness to a different crumb structure. And in the plant-based space, this is huge. Aging can soften fibrous components to get a creamier mouthfeel or stabilize an emulsion.
Which again helps you avoid artificial stabilizers. It's a big win for clean label.
It is, but you have to be deliberate. The industry calls it texture tuning. You pair the aging with hydration steps, or you adjust the fat and protein matrix to get it just right. It's a constant balancing act.
What's really interesting here is that it's not just sensory, there are nutritional implications too.
Right. Strategic aging can actually preserve or even enhance certain phytochemicals and peptides. The flip side is that other things, like some antioxidants, might degrade over time.
So what's the requirement there?
Rigorous, validated shelf life testing. Any marketing claim you make about functional benefits must be backed by data from your specific process. You can't just use generic nutritional info.
So the driving force is clear. Consumer demand for deep flavor and clean labels.
Which brings us squarely to the most serious part of all this, safety and compliance. When you are intentionally encouraging biological activity, you are, by definition, introducing risk.
Okay, so let's talk about hazard identification and control HACCP in this context.
Any aging process introduces microbial and chemical risks, pathogens, spoilage, toxins like aflatoxins. A robust HACCP plan is mandatory. It has to cover everything from raw material sourcing to the final temperature controls in the aging room.
What would a best-in-class sampling schedule look like?
It has to be multifaceted. You need rigorous microbiological testing, periodic checks of pH and water activity, and this is crucial, sensory panels to catch any early signs of a problem. And you document everything meticulously.
The regulatory landscape must be a minefield.
It's a huge challenge, especially for global brands. Labeling frameworks demand total transparency. And regulatory planning has to happen from day one, not after you launch, because the rules are so different. A claim that's fine in the U.S. might be completely prohibited in the EU.
And supply chain integrity must be a nightmare for these volatile ingredients.
It's essential. You need end-to-end traceability and cold chain integrity. A temperature slip-up at a port can destroy an entire batch of expensive aged material. Visibility is accountability.
Let's touch on sustainability. How does this high-precision aging help with that?
That's where the innovation is really shining. Yes, these facilities use energy, but strategic aging can unlock value from inputs that would otherwise be waste.
Like what?
Imperfect produce, industrial side streams. By transforming these surplus inputs through fermentation, you're valorizing byproducts. You're turning waste into high-value ingredients.
So reducing waste and increasing yield.
Exactly. And now we're seeing innovations like energy-optimized aging rooms and heat recovery systems to offset that energy use.
Okay, let's end with the future. What's the next wave of innovation here?
We are moving from static testing to dynamic control. We're talking real-time sensors and IoT-enabled environments.
So instead of pulling a sample for the lab,
you're monitoring temperature, humidity, even microbial activity in situ inside the batch, and adjusting conditions on the fly based on that data.
Dynamic control versus periodic sampling. That sounds like a fundamental shift.
It is. Advanced analytics take that constant stream of data, find correlations between variables and sensory outcomes, and help you get to market faster. It's the only way to get true reproducibility at a massive scale.
This all raises a really important question. Is aging just time?
I think Dr. Elena Morales from the source material says it best. She says, aging is less about waiting and more about orchestrating time with precision. The best programs blend science, sensory insight, and rigorous controls to deliver consistent experiences that consumers trust.
That's a perfect summary. We've mapped the entire journey, from the 3 core mechanisms to the industrial methods, and the huge impact on flavor, texture, and clean label appeal.
The key takeaway for anyone developing a product is this. Treat aging as a high-precision toolkit. Define your goals, implement continuous safety checks, and plan for regulatory compliance from the very beginning.
And that leaves us with our final provocative thought for you to mull over. The market is pushing for standardized definitions and real evidence for aged claims. So, given these advances in real-time sensors and data analytics, how quickly will regulators shift from requiring static safety checks to demanding the continuous dynamic data-driven assurance that this new tech enables?
It's a good question. That shift from paper records to a constant verifiable data flow is coming.
Yeah.
And it will change the definition of quality assurance globally.
It absolutely will. That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.